A Soviet commander has gone rogue with a cutting-edge nuclear submarine, and forces on both sides of the Atlantic are desperate to find him. This is a Jack Ryan adaptation where Sean Connery doesn't even try an accent, so let's talk about the hunt for Red October. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Russians don't take a dump without a plan, son.
This is a movie podcast, and we are working through submarine season here. We've done a couple of 50s movies. We did Das Boot last time, and now we're into another fairly well-known movie, I would say, and that is 1990's The Hunt for Red October, directed by John McTiernan. In fact, I didn't check this beforehand, but if I do have a quick look now, well, I find that this is the first movie he did right after Die Hard. That's what I'm questioning.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me, yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It sounded right timeline-wise. So that's interesting, but more on the director a bit later. But yeah, this is a fairly famous submarine movie. It is a Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy adaptation. Obviously, there's been a few of those with different actors over the years. This is one of the bigger ones, that, or arguably maybe even the most successful one. So,
I mean, it's the first one, as far as I'm aware, in terms of timeline of like movies made, but it's also the first one. It's the first book in the Tom Clancy like book series.
Oh, really?
As well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a rough idea of how many books there are in that series? Because I feel like it seems like a lot.
Yeah. So, based off of the Wikipedia page I saw, in terms of Tom Clancy writing solo while he was alive, because the series got picked up by people after the fact, the Jack Ryan series makes up 12 books.
Okay, and then there's some ghostwriting ones afterwards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is not the ghost of Jack Ryan, it's more people pretending to be Jack Ryan, just to be clear.
Yes. Well, people pretend to be Tom Clancy, yeah.
Tom Clancy, yes, I said it wrong. But you know what I meant.
Yeah, I got
you know what I meant. So, yeah, interchangeable at this point, who cares? So, yes. I mean, the basic premise of this one is basically that Sean Connery plays a Russian submarine captain who is getting into business for himself with this fancy new Russian submarine, and both the American Navy and the Russian Navy, or I should say the Soviet Navy to be precise, are trying to find him based on what he may or may not do with this nuclear submarine that he's in command of. And there's a lot of cutting around to very different characters on both sides. Of course, we all start spoiler free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, hit the like button, helps out a bunch if you do, and you can support everything over at Patreon, get some bonuses, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yeah, big cast in this one. We got Sean Connery, we got Alec Baldwin, Scott Glenn, Sam Neill, James Earl Jones, Tim Curry, Courtney B. Vance, Stellan Skarsgård. It's a lot of names. It's a lot of... Obviously, it's also a bit of a sausage fest. I'm realising as I say all that out loud. But
hold on. After the first scene, do we ever see a woman?
You see Jack Ryan's wife, and I recognise the actress.
But I was saying after the first scene, because that's what I'm counting as like that first scene.
Because that's Dr. Beverly Crusher from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yep. I honestly cannot think of one.
The only thing I could think of is maybe when we see like the Russian like wherever in Moscow, when we see like the guy, maybe he's got a secretary or something that we see like for a split second. That's the only thing I can think of where we might see a woman after that scene where he's leaving home.
I mean, there are definitely that's Caroline Ryan. Never mind. Stewardess on the plane. Oh, that's about
there you go. Yeah, there's a flight attendant. Yep, that's it. That's it.
There you go. 2 Russian uncredited secretaries.
Nailed it.
I guess they were there.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I say, I started that by saying the basic premise. It feels a bit difficult to just sum this up in one basic line because it's got some directions it takes and it evolves as it goes on. But largely it's about trying to figure out what this guy's doing, what this Russian commander's doing, and what they can do with that. And I should say Soviet, because technically the character's not Russian. He's actually Lithuanian, I believe they said, at one point. But he obviously is a high-ranking Soviet captain, and we get into things from there. So, is this one you had seen before? If out of all the ones we're going to talk about this season, I feel like this one and the next one are the only ones I suspect you might have seen before.
I'll save the game on the next one. I have not seen either prior to this. I will say I have always had a passing interest in the Jack Ryan series. I did check out the first couple of seasons of the John Krasinski, I think, Amazon show. I enjoyed that well enough. I think, I kind of just fell off it over time, lost interest. But between that and then, God, what was the title? Sum of All Fears, I think, with Ben Affleck playing Jack Ryan that time around. That's my exposure to the Jack Ryan mythos as a whole.
Yeah, I saw the first season of that Amazon show, which I basically just decided when I finished that first season that, like, that was fine for what it was, but I never need to watch a single second more of it because it's just not quite for me. So it's a bit dry, doesn't really have a lot of like depth or emotional side to it. It's just kind of like going through its shtick, and that's okay for what it is, but not something I need to care about. So I had seen this before quite a bit of time ago. I didn't really remember a whole lot outside of, a couple of the actors' faces and maybe like a couple of settings and that kind of thing. Nothing super in depth. I didn't really remember what the plot was or what it went to outside of there was a submarine and they're looking for it. That was it. And the title kind of already tells you that, frankly.
I was going to say, wow, I wonder what the name of the submarine is. Could be anything.
So, yeah, I went into this having forgotten almost everything, very curious about how I would feel about it, because I definitely remembered that I felt not fussed. Like, I didn't think it was a bad movie at the time when I first saw it. I didn't necessarily care that much about it either. I just kind of felt like, yeah, it's solid enough, but I don't think it's that interesting either. So I was curious to see if my opinion on that would change now that at least a decade plus has passed since then. And, we've got this extra context to these other submarine movies and whatnot. It'd be interesting to see. And maybe, of course, given that this is a 1990 movie filled with a lot of faces that are... I mean, a lot of them are still acting in some capacity. Some of them have passed away. Some very recently, actually. Sam Neill, of course, just passed away a month or two ago by the time this goes out. So I was curious to see, maybe there'll be like a... I don't want to say nostalgia, but like there'll be some sort of charm to just kind of the era it was made in and the people involved and so on. Because I'm sure, like I'm positive when I first watched this, I watched it because it was John McTiernan directing it. I'm sure that's why I decided to put it on, was because, hey, I like Die Hard, I like Predator, I like Last Action Hero. What is Hunt for Red October going to give me? And that's probably why I did at the time. But yeah, I mean, I think we can kind of get into our feelings and then we'll go from there and see how we get on. So, David, what did you think of The Hunt for Red October?
I think, in general, I liked it. I think it was a fun time. I like the way that we handle the different threads. It's a very you got to keep up sort of movie. It doesn't feel like it's slowing things down or it's all just like action or whatever. It does have this sort of intelligence thing where you're wondering about the motivations of this character and that character and how different things are going to overlap. I appreciate that. I think it rewards the audience for really paying attention. One of my big things, though, and this kind of goes into my waning attention with Jack Ryan overall, is I feel like I have seen this already. I feel like when it comes down to Jack Ryan stuff, maybe this is just the things that have been adapted. And I haven't seen the Harrison Ford ones, Patriot Games and the other one. Whatever they like, I don't know if maybe they play a completely different tune, but out of what I've seen, it seems like the Jack Ryan formula is a formula. It seems very clear as to like, here's exactly how things are going to play out. And I don't think it's really spoilers because it does take some twists, but like a big thing is if you just follow Jack, you're probably going to be fine. Like Jack is the main character for a reason. So he gets most things right most of the time. Beyond that, I think that it is well made in terms of cinematography, in terms of sound. I think it does a great job with the way that it characterizes the Soviets, and especially the way that like this is talked about all the time, the way they do the pivot from Russian to English, I think was very smart and very well done in terms of like how they got that so we don't have to read subtitles the whole time. But beyond that, I just feel like I've seen this story already played out at least 3 other times with watching Jack Ryan stuff. And while this may be the first, and maybe it's what set the formula, it does feel very standard by that measure.
Yeah, it's a perfectly solid, well-made movie for a story that I think... It's not even that I think the story's kind of lackluster. I think the actual themes that it's playing with and the core of it is actually very good, right? I think the core of it of like, oh, what's this rogue Soviet captain going to do with his nuclear sub, and here's all the things at play. But I think the way this story is told for me is perfectly serviceable, but not something that excites me all that much. And what I mean by that is it very much does the thing where we're cutting around different places. We're constantly getting title cards of this is, the embassy at this, state, or this is the base at this port in this country. And we're constantly stuffing around from different US submarines and other things. And that's okay a little bit early on to set up your story, but when I feel like you're just doing that the whole movie, I'm like, well, when are we settling into actually just getting into the story itself and the characters? And it's funny, you said Jack Ryan's the main character, and I think, generally speaking, that's probably true for Jack Ryan books and like the other Jack Ryan stuff. I would argue that here it's really more the Soviet captain is more the main character. Not that he gets so much screen time that he feels like clearly the main character, but I think he's the main character in the sense that him and maybe Sam Neill, who's kind of his first officer or his XO, they feel like they have the most character in this movie. And I think everyone else is just there to serve the plot. And I think that's that's my big thing with this is a movie that is 99% just plot and very little story and very little character. And I think that is a disservice, because I think if I cared about the motivations for why something was happening, especially since as the movie gets on and it's like, okay, what's at stake here? And I don't want to spoil anything, but when we get to the back half of the movie, it's like, ultimately, the things that's actually at stake here are very specific, and the people who are in jeopardy are very specific. And I think I would like to care more about that, but the movie obviously has kept such an arm's length, and it's sort of like toying with all these other ideas of where things might go, that it never quite, I can talk about this more freely once we get to spoilers, but it's all plot and no story. And I think the problem with that, or that's not always a problem, right? I think a lot of action movies happily get away with all plot and action and no story. But this is a movie that's all plot, no story, and really not a lot of action either, because it's not really that much of an action movie. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's fine to be that when you're doing something like a Speed or a Die Hard, although I would argue Die Hard has way more character and story than this movie does, but it's okay to an extent to be that for those movies, because the story's pretty simple, so you get to kind of like enjoy how it plays out. Whereas this movie, it feels like I'm constantly having to be fed information to keep up with what the story is and how it's changing, so I can never settle and actually enjoy the mechanisms of it. So, and that's like a good portion of the runtime. So I think ultimately by the end, I'm like, okay, you successfully gave me 2 hours and 15 minutes of information, but I don't really feel that moved by much of it.
Yeah, like I hear everything you're saying, and I agree with it. I absolutely feel like there is no emotional core to this movie. It is all of just like, okay, here's the plan, let's see if we can get the plan into action, and like we just follow that.
Yep.
I love that kind of movie though. Like that's the kind of thing for me where like, as much, I love a good emotional core as well. I'm not going to say it's not, but like if you have all of these different competing ideas, these things of like, this one person doesn't have all the information, this other person doesn't have all the information, they're working on their own assumptions towards their own goals, how are they going to intersect, what's that's going to be? If it's intelligent enough and done skillfully enough, I don't really need an emotional core, because I'm interested enough in the mind games and the deductions that are being played here, in the same way as like a mystery novel or something like that. I think that it plays out well there. For me, the big caveat here is that works when I don't feel like I know what's going to happen. But because I am familiar with the Jack Ryan formula, I do feel like I know what's going to happen, and I don't think this movie really surprised me at any point along the way. It felt like it was following the beats that I was familiar with. So as much as I, don't need an emotional core, it failed for me in a different way because of that same problem that you're stating there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, as far as Jack Ryan formula goes, I don't know the Jack Ryan formula, not really. So I was never thinking about it in that context. I was just never more like, I was always at an arm's length from any of the characters and any stakes that there were kind of supposed to be there. Like, technically the stakes here are super high. This submarine could be launching nukes and starting World War III. It could be doing all these things, and I gotta say,
starting World War III is part of the Jack Ryan formula.
Sure.
That's a thing that just keeps happening.
Yeah, right. But it could be doing all these things, and I'm happy that it's not just doing those things. I'm happy that there is something more specific that it's actually trying to tell a story about. But I wish I cared more about it. I wish that there was because I think you go two ways with this to make this movie better for me, or the story better for me. Either it's more of an intense character drama on top of what it's doing, and that makes me care about the stakes of what's happening on a personal level, or you have it be more of an action movie. You go the Mission Impossible route, and you have it be about the excellent set pieces and the trying to solve the things with, and like, obviously there's a couple of quick things where it's like, oh, someone has to get onto a submarine or whatever, and there's like a little bit of potential actiony drama there, but it's not like, it never feels like it's going to be any of those things. And I think, and I'm going to upset Jack Ryan fans here when I say what I'm about to say, but the whole gimmick of Jack Ryan being that he's just an analyst and therefore doesn't do actiony things, and that's not what it's supposed to be, that might make him a bad character to actually follow, especially since, as you said yourself, he's just always right. He's never making mistakes. He just always has answers, and no one trusts him. And I actually got sick in this movie of a character. Like, there's a point in this movie where he had Scott Glenn, who's a captain of a submarine. He hands him like an instruction to do, and he looks up and goes, "Are you out of your damn mind?" And I'm like, that's been everyone's reaction every time Jack Ryan has said anything in this movie, is to say, "Are you out of your mind? Are you serious? Are you crazy?" Yeah. And then 5 minutes later, oh, he was right. We should have listened to him the whole time. Over and over again. Jack Ryan is barely a character in this movie. He's just a walking magic MacGuffin machine.
That's fair. I will say, when I looked up the Jack Ryan Wikipedia page and I came across those 12 novels, apparently there is a split somewhere along the way where we instead focus on a character named, I think it's John Clark, and he is the guy who's willing to get his hands dirty, like former Marine, going in action hero wise. I don't know if he's any less right all the time than Jack Ryan, but it sounds like that's more of the character we're looking for in these scenarios.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying I want an action hero, right? That's not what I'm saying. I think people are going to misinterpret what I just said as saying he should be an action star. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what he is shit, right? And he could be literally anything else. He could, if you want to do these smart, like, he's the guy who's going to use diplomacy to get things done. If that's what you're going to tell me, then have an intelligent script about diplomacy, not just everyone always looks at him and goes, "Are you crazy, you son of a bitch? Oh no, wait, he was right 5 minutes later," because that gets old really fast. Do you know what? The more I'm talking about this, the more I'm realizing that I think the Jack Ryan character is just kind of shit. All right, I'm just saying it.
That's fair. I mean, here's the thing: the Jack Ryan character, as far as I'm aware, again, this might change with seeing like the Harrison Ford movies or stuff like that, but as far as I'm aware, it exists as a byproduct of the Cold War. Like, the books were written in the height of that, like as we were coming into the 80s and all that. It exists as this byproduct of a zero trust environment, but you have one guy who's always assuming maybe they're doing a rational thing and we shouldn't just assume that we're like assuming the end of the world is going to happen. And then everyone's like, "Oh, rabble, we can't just assume that. That's crazy." That's kind of where he needs to exist in, which makes it like he works perfectly for the Cold War and then post 9/11. Like, there's this weird in-between area of the 90s where he's just like, yeah, all right, well, that's not really a thing anymore.
I mean, I don't care about any of that. I don't care about where he fits in. I just don't think this, like, he's the least compelling character in this entire movie. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. He's there to drive the plot. Absolutely. And to be fair, you said one of two ways this could be fixed, and one of them being intense character drama. Without having seen the movie, I thought that's what it was. I
Yeah.
always thought that Hunt for Red October was closer to like Enemy Below, where it's just competing sides and we just need to figure out like, oh, how are we going to get through this?
That's the thing. Like, as much as this has got a lot of jargon in it and it's doing a lot of cutting around and it's constantly explaining submarine tech and what we're doing and so on, it's very, very like Hollywood in the way it does everything. Like, everything's very slick and, you know, clean cut, and it's constantly chopping up and going around. It feels like, I don't know, it feels kind of soulless in a way to me, a lot of this movie. Which again, I think it's perfectly fine and serviceable in just about every potential way. There's nothing aggressively bad about anything in it. I just don't think that it ever really is that engaging or compelling. Because I mean, like the heart of the movie is that if we are going to be going along with this idea that the Soviet commander is doing something that isn't just, oh, he's went nuts and he's trying to start another war, right? He has got some intention that is going to make the audience conflicted. Then, god damn it, and like make us like understand it, make us like really care about this guy and like understand his goals and kind of root for like the what you know, this root for the needle to be threaded so that like the right outcome happens. It should feel like we're going through, I don't know, the example I'm thinking of in my head is like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes or something like that, where there's like these like two sides that are going to break down and there's like kind of this almost goal in the middle of like maybe we can kind of see the middle ground and figure something out, because effectively that's what the movie's trying to do. It's trying to have Jack Ryan try and thread this needle of like everyone's expectations of what's going on and what's happening. He's trying to find this sensible middle ground that actually would make sense. But alternatively though, if you're going to do the whole thing where it's a mystery of okay, what are the intentions and whatnot, I'm not going to say what they are, but the movie basically confirms what the Soviet captain's intentions are right after the question is posed. Like he basically just looks at the audience and tells them like 2 minutes later, and I won't say what it is, but it's like, okay, well, there's no mystique there anymore. We know what he wants to do, and now we're just playing out like all these other things.
Now it's a character irony where it's just like, oh, they don't have the full picture and we have to wait until they can get the full picture. I will say what you're describing there, without getting too deep into the weeds of it, is Sum of All Fears. Like, that movie is a lot more of this thing of like escalating tensions, and then Jack Ryan's just kind of stuck in the middle trying to like make sure things don't get out of hand. That movie has 1,000 other problems that are keeping it from being like a great movie, but the setup there is kind of what I think of as the ideal Jack Ryan plot. Whereas this one, you mentioned much earlier on that by the time that we hit a certain point, the stakes are so low, all things considered, that it needed to have some level of character interaction for us to really care about it on that deeper level. I mean, can't talk about any of it without spoiling it, but the final, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the hurdle, the final obstacle they needed to get past, I felt like wasn't set up at all, really. It was just kind of like, now that's there, whatever, deal with it.
I mean, there was one scene technically setting that up, but
technically, but it felt so just like tacked in and post almost.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I can see the better version of this, right? And and the funny thing is that I've brought this up before, the episode of Star Trek, the original series, which is basically like a submarine combat episode, right? Like, I like that episode more than this movie, and I think it does a better job of like the tension, and that's not the same type of plot by any stretch. It's not going anywhere that this movie goes by any stretch, but I almost was thinking, especially towards the end, where I think I'd prefer the Star Trek version of what this is doing, because I can see things landing a bit more, and I can see whether it's, I mean, probably ideally Picard, given it's more of a diplomatic thing, but like even if it is Kirk, I could see it working in a way that I just find a little bit more interesting and satisfying. I almost think that in some ways, like this weird, like almost fetish that the Jack Ryan stuff has for like actual, military and government protocol, and like having all these real world things all like represented, the CIA, the FBI, the Navy, this to that, and like the KGB, blah blah blah, right? All this stuff, like it loves talking about all this stuff. It loves being bashed in the real world of all these things that existed or do still exist, and all of that stuff, I think, just bogs everything down. I almost feel like we could get to the root of what this movie actually wants to be much quicker if we cut out some of this like excess stuff of like trying to make it fit into like a real world context. It's like oh, the start of 1984, this was happening and blah blah. And I'm like, none of this matters. Everything you tell me in the opening text is not, unlike Das Boot, which set a stage for the tensions that all the characters are in the rest of the movie. Like the opening of Das Boot is like, hey, we've been losing so many submarines. This is why all the crews are going to be really young now. We're sending out young people, so that explains why it's all young people, and that creates this extra air of tension. All the text at the start of this is all just fluff to make it sound important, and then movie plays out.
I will argue the point specifically on the fact that it's in 1984 has this extra layer of late phase Cold War. And I think that it is obviously less of a setting than World War II is, because that is a very obvious place that you can put it. But the tensions that are present there, I don't think should be underestimated in terms of like how big of a deal it is to have it set during that period compared to like 1990.
Let's talk about the year. Right, okay, fine. Just say 1984. Boom, start movie. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the 2 minutes it takes writing out computer text of captions saying, hey, this ship went off, like, this submarine Typhoon class, disappeared in this vicinity of the ocean, blah, blah. But the authorities will tell you that never happened. I'm like, all of this is just fluff to try and sound enticing.
No, all right. I misunderstood. I thought you were just talking about the setting in general. Yeah,
no.
If you're talking about...
Yeah, set it in 1984. Knock yourself out. I don't care.
If you're talking about that opening text, of course that opening text is just fluff. No movie ever needs to open up with, the following files were classified. And it's not going to, like, improve the movie at all. It's just there for the sake of, like, hey, psst, come here. We're going to show you something secret.
Yeah, but it's kind of the hollow nature of the whole thing to me is kind of summed up almost in just how cheap that opening text feels of trying to make it sound enticing. I don't know. That's fair. For me, it's what gets me is when it comes down to the brief times where they do try to do a character bit, where they try to like instill a little bit of like, oh, Jack has trouble falling asleep on airplanes, or like his daughter is asking for a little baby brother or something like that. And they spend the most bare minimum amount of words to throw that onto the page and then never make it feel like it's anything at all. I think the biggest thing for me is like, I won't spoil too much about what's happening here, but they set up in the very beginning the idea that there is this little teddy bear thing that he needs to bring back another teddy bear after he's done with this trip or whatever. And it just never comes up over the course of like the entire movie. It's never a thing where he's like, oh yeah, you had a gift shop or something here that I could pick up a teddy bear or like something like that. Like it's completely dropped from pretty much the entirety of the running time and only brought up when it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we're resolving that plot point. It's just, it feels so empty in that aspect of it, of saying that this thing is important to him, and then every action he takes is like, yeah, well, what family? Who cares? I'm off to do this thing. Yeah, no, it's like there's a couple of lines or small moments where it's like, hey, we have done our contractually obligated sequences of character building. Now we will never think of it ever again because that's not what we're here for. Yeah, honestly, this is the irony of what I'm about to say, given it's a submarine movie, but it's just kind of dry. It's so dry.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, if we're talking specifically about submarine movie stuff, I will say I got a very unsettling feeling in the beginning when we saw the interiors of the Red October, because it felt like we took a major step back from the cramped, confined spaces of Das Boot and now have gone back to the control panel where everyone's just free to do whatever they want in like 500 square feet. The only saving grace is very shortly there afterwards, they do say, this thing is like the biggest submarine we have. Like it is built to be a bit more spacious and is the size of like an aircraft carrier from World War II.
Yeah, I mean, you do see also other submarines in the movie, so it depends how you feel about them in comparison, I suppose.
Look, by the time we hit the third act of this movie, I feel like every rule it sets up about like, oh, here's how the world works just gets thrown out the window, and we're just doing whatever.
I just liked how the Red October feels almost like a spaceship, because everything's lit up, and even the periscope is this shiny kind of chrome, kind of like cuboid kind of shit. I was like, oh, they've really went all out here to make this feel like it's got some bling. This is a blingy submarine.
That's the reason the Soviet Union went under. They spent all their money on this submarine.
And not enough money on the graphite rods for their nuclear reactors. I'm sorry, that was a very specific joke.
Hey, dude, I was literally describing things that happened in the Jack Ryan universe to my wife, and she was like, oh, you know, all this like nuclear stuff going on, like Chernobyl. I'm like, yeah, like Chernobyl. Exactly. Not at all. It's not even close, but like I had to give her something there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm about as disinterested in Jack Ryan as she is, probably. So I sympathize.
I mean, I was fine with the show. That's the thing. The show, like, it didn't hook me, but I also wasn't like angry at it. It was
just forgettable TV. There was nothing interesting about it. Yeah.
I will say, my brief reading of the Wikipedia page, it's strange to me that every single time I've seen an adaptation of the Jack Ryan stuff, it seems to be very early in the career, because it's only 12 books, and some of those books follow a different guy entirely. But like over the Jack Ryan series, apparently he becomes like head of the NSA, vice president, and then president. And none of that later stuff has ever been done. He's always just a CIA analyst.
I don't know, maybe it's a Spider-Man thing. He's more interesting when he's poor and struggling.
Yeah, probably.
He can't even be too successful.
Are they going to have him as president get into a submarine and say, all right, take me to where Sean Connery is?
Oh dear. Like, it's just a perfectly watchable movie. It really is, but I just don't find it that interesting by and large. And it's not because the plot concept is uninteresting. It's just every sort of, like, the way the story's written, the way it's presented, and every choice of what to focus on is just so dry to me. And I'm sure some people probably like that. I think it makes it just kind of boring a lot for long stretches, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
so
that's fair. Yeah. I probably found it more interesting than you, but there was a point where I just kind of, I wouldn't even say checked out, but I got it. And it didn't at any point after that throw me any curveballs or any surprises where I was thinking, oh, okay, this is something new and fresh and original, even if it was new at the time, considering that this was the first one adapted.
And, you know, it's a shame, because, it's like literally John McTiernan did Predator, then Die Hard, and then this. And this is so less interesting than those two movies. It's not even a competition. Those are much, much better films in every aspect. So,
yeah. How much did he have on writing for Die Hard and Predator? Was he involved in that?
I don't think so. I never really thought of him as a writer, to be honest. Why?
Yeah, I'm because this is obviously adapted from a source material. Die Hard had a book, but it was heavily changed.
Yeah, but I don't think
Predator was anything.
Yeah, I don't think John McTiernan gets credited as a writer usually.
No, I don't think I've just director.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of him being a writer. So I think there was because Predator was written by two brothers, I want to say, and then I don't know who adapted Die Hard, but I don't think it was him.
Steven D'Souza, Roderick Thorpe, and Jeb Stewart. One of those is the writer of the book, but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's super uninteresting from that point of view. He's even got the same cinematographer that he used on Die Hard, Jean de Bont, who later went on to direct Speed. So Basil Polymedaris, who scored RoboCop, did the music for this, and the music's fine. There's a lot of Russian sounding, like, you know, singing in it and stuff like that, but nothing I'm really remembering all that well.
No, the main score does not land in the brain at all. It's all just, oh, okay, this is Russian. This is what it is now.
Da 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 da.
I was playing this through my speakers. My wife was in the room, and it got to the portion pretty close to the beginning where the whole crew is singing the Russian national anthem. She literally asked out loud, "What kind of Russian song is this?" I'm like, "This is the Russian song." She's like, "Oh, all right, that makes sense."
To be fair, I didn't know that was the national anthem either.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm just more familiar with Soviet history of their music, I guess.
I mean, is that the Soviet national anthem or the Russian national anthem?
Oh, God. See, now you're pulling on a thread. I don't know.
Well, because I guess the distinction would be if it's the Soviet one, it wouldn't be used anymore, or is this still the national anthem that Russia uses if it's the Russian one?
I have to assume it changed. I have nothing to back that up, but I have to assume it changed.
Also, I would like to point out in this movie that the Russian characters, when they're speaking in English, pronounce it Moscow. Not Moscow, but the Americans say Moscow. And I've always wondered, actually, if like maybe I just say Moscow and maybe everyone who's from the UK just say Moscow because we're used to other words with a similar spelling being pronounced that way. Maybe the Americans are right. But everyone who's not American in this movie says Moscow, not Moscow. So what is wrong with you idiots? Start saying Moscow. That's how it's pronounced.
Look, we're running into the same problem that we ran into with Chernobyl, which is, okay, we don't want to have them speaking in Russian the whole time, so we're going to give them different accents. But if you pull on the thread, you then have to ask, why is Sean Connery speaking in a Scottish accent where everyone else is not?
This has nothing to do with accents. This is just to do with your pronunciation of Moscow. Okay?
I understand. I get it. I mean, that's somebody probably started saying it one way and everyone's like, well, I mean, we got to go along with him. He already said it on camera. By the way, just looked it up. Apparently, the current Russian national anthem has the same music as the Soviet one, but they changed the lyrics to get rid of like Soviet references.
Maybe a few Putin lines get thrown in there. Maybe.
Well, it was written in 2000. I don't know when Putin came in, but hopefully wasn't that installed at that point.
He probably get changed again anyway. I mean, who cares? Yeah. The ego on old Vladimir.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a character very early in this who I don't think we hear his last name when he's around, but then later on they're like, "Oh, Putin." I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
what about Putin?
Not that Putin. Not that Putin.
Yeah, this is 1984. What are you predicting? What's going on?
Hey, Putin would have been born already for sure, but obviously not in charge of Russia yet.
No, definitely not. According to this, he would have just married his wife. 1983.
And she can't just, slip some cyanide in his drink at any point now.
Well, she's dead now. Fell out a window. It happens.
So she probably tried, and he caught her. And
I'm kidding about the falling out of the window. I just use that as the general Russian.
All right. Okay. Fell out a window into some bullets.
Yeah, exactly. She committed suicide with 3 shots to the head.
She double tapped herself somehow.
Yeah.
All right, let's do spoilers for The Hunt for Red October. You have been warned. Let's get into it. Okay, so my phrasing of this is awkward because Sam Neill just passed away. And I don't want to just say Sam Neill died because that sounds really. But I'm just talking about the character. But there's a scene. There's a scene in this movie where he starts talking about how he wants to see Montana and like some other states. And as soon as he started talking, I'm like, "Oh, you're so dead. You are so dead."
Yeah, I do like that. I read a trivia bit where he does the whole Montana speech, and then the place where they're doing the dinosaur dig in Jurassic Park is Montana.
Oh, that's funny.
So he got there eventually. Yeah,
because he would have known. I mean, maybe he knew that he was cast in that at this point, but I doubt even that, probably not, because it was still another year or two before they shot that movie, so probably not.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, I wanted to get that out of the way first, because that was.
Oh yeah, no. There was only one surprise in this movie where I was convinced a character would die, and they never did, and that was Tim Curry.
No, Tim Curry doesn't actually get a whole lot to do. He is the doctor on the Red October, and he's kind of a red herring for who might be a saboteur, because there's a saboteur on board. But ultimately, he's just convinced the captain's a hero by the end. We'll get into all that when we talk about the third act, but he doesn't really have that much to do, to be honest, for a large stretch. He's just kind of a bit part, which is it's kind of a shame because Tim Curry's quite entertaining. But
oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's also it's a. Trying to think of a good comparison point, because honestly, I was going to say like Home Alone 2, but even in Home Alone 2,
he's got way more.
He's got some bigger moments. Yeah.
And
I'm not even talking just like screen time. I'm talking about like the amount of emotion he's able to put into the role.
He's got more character. He's more memorable. Yeah. He's got like here he's just like anyone could have played this role. It didn't need to be Tim Curry, right?
Right. Exactly.
This could have been Jeff from Accountant playing this role probably. So
probably.
Yeah, I mean, the movie obviously has a bit of mystique at the start of like, okay, what's he going to do? The big reveal that he's up to something, of course, is when he kills the political officer who's been put on board, who has the other launch missile key, which is almost the big red herring of like, oh, he wants both keys because maybe he's going to launch some nukes later. And then I love how that never is a factor at all for the rest of the movie, because obviously, like, the others are like talking and stuff, and Jack Ryan has his whole idea where he comes out and says, I think he's trying to defect. And the very next scene, it cuts to like Sean Connery at his dinner table going, yes, we're going to defect. So, can we expect the Americans to accept us with open arms? And I'm like, okay, so we're not going to let that sit for a while and make us wonder if he's actually defecting or going to start World War III. We're just...
All right, so I couldn't talk about this before because spoilers, obviously, but I do think the movie tries to do the red herring of maybe he's lying about defecting. And I point to the scene specifically when they are being tailed by the U.S. submarine, and then they start getting fired upon because obviously the submarine doesn't know they're trying to defect. And then one of his crewmates is saying, like, why are they shooting at us? Oh, why are they doing all that? And even Sam Neill is kind of looking at Sean Connery like a little bit like, hey man, what's up? What's going on? And it feels like they're trying to say this thing of maybe he's telling everyone defect, but actually there's another layer underneath this.
No, I never, because even in the moment, I just took that as, no, he's a very risky captain. He's got all these fancy moves, so he's basically like, hey, no, we're going to do my fancy play to avoid this. And he ultimately, much like Jack Ryan, he keeps being right. He keeps working where it's like, hey, no, hold your position till this last second, and then I'll tell you when to left or turn or, whatever it's going to be. So it's just kind of like the faith in him that he's making good calls is kind of like what was, I think, in that moment. To be honest, I never even thought for a second. After he said that we're planning on defecting and it's him and all the officers and the engineer who are all in on it, as soon as they had that scene, it never even once crossed my mind after that. Because I think from that point on, the drama of the movie is very much supposed to be that you're rooting for them to actually defect. Because the problem is that he's sent in a letter to Moscow saying, hey, by the way, I'm defecting, lol. And Moscow, and part of the reason why he does this is it seems to be, one, he wants to announce it out of some sort of sense of pride to say, hey, F you, I'm doing this. But also because it means that there's no backing out, because when the other officer's like, oh, maybe we should change our minds, he's like, oh no, it's a bit late for that. I sent a letter to Moscow telling them we're all defecting, so they're not going to welcome us back with open arms. Don't you worry about it. It's like, oh shit, Captain, shit.
I do like it though, because again, that then the idea, I think, of what this movie does work well with is how you don't know the full plan. Nobody knows the full plan of what's going to happen, and you have to slowly watch the characters deduce it in front of your eyes and then see it play out saying, this is how, like, a lot of the crew is not on board with the defecting. It's just the officers. How do they make it so that the crew does not
that's misrepresenting things. They're not on board. They do not know. That's different. Fair enough. Right? Yeah, they're under the impression they're just operating under orders, and Connery and the officers are making sure they don't know that they're defecting. And there's a whole plan to try and get them off the sub eventually to,
But the implication is the idea that they would be loyal to the Soviet Union. It's not something where he would be able to convince them to say, like, no, let's go to America. We can go to Montana. We're going to live on Sam Neill's farm.
Yeah, but it's never, but the tension of that never becomes that. It's all about trying to just keep them in the dark, as opposed to the actual, like, how do we deal if they do try and, like, have a mutiny or whatever. So, like, that's very much that. But, like, the drama of the movie is kind of this idea that we're supposed to be kind of rooting for Connery and his team, because the Soviets have all launched a bunch of submarines trying to hunt them down. The Americans obviously are a bit tetchy about this new submarine that's got fancy technology that can propel it silently so that it can't be detected under conventional sonar. Although Courtney B. Vance does, figure it out and can track it. He can listen for it now and he knows what he's to listen for. But that's the whole thing. So that's the thing. It's the idea that both sides are coming down on top of him, and then Jack Ryan's the one guy saying, no, I think he's trying to do this. Let's try and just talk to him and not just blow everything up. And they try and, like, he tries to present it as, hey, this is an opportunity, because if we get our hands on that sub, we can, like, reverse engineer the technology, we can understand all of their stuff, it's a big opportunity. But I don't think that's something that the audience is ever going to latch onto and care about. Like, that's like this, like, we need to personally care about the ones who want to defect and then making out alive. And I think that's where the movie fails a little bit, because I think if we spent a bit more time with them, obviously, yes, we get the Montana speech, but it's just that one scene and it's so surface level and obvious what it's trying to do that I'm like, no, we need a bit more with these people to understand why they want to defect so we can root for them. Because ultimately, the only thing that the stakes are really have in the last act is whether or not they're going to successfully defect and like be alive and be okay and get out with this. Because the American subs are basically never really in that much danger, right? It's never really an issue. No one's concerned about World War III starting, especially by the third act. Even the people who were still skeptical for a long time, they've kind of just went, oh yeah, okay, Jack Ryan was right. I guess we're just trying to make this all work now. Like, all that's went out the window. So the only thing to really, really care about by the end is the success of their attempt to defect. And I just wished I cared more about those characters so that I gave a shit. And like, I wanted to be gut-wrenching. I wanted to feel compelled by all of the beats. I wanted this big sequence near the end where Scott Glenn and Jack Ryan and the others come aboard the Red October, and like Connery's there with these officers and they're all ready to welcome them, and it's a bit tense at first, but you know, they shake hands, whatever. We seek asylum, blah, 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 all that stuff. I wanted that to feel like a big deal, especially since the third act then goes into this thing where, this like handful of officers and the handful of Americans need to like operate the Red October on their own together to try and avoid this other Russian sub that's showing up. I'm like, that should feel like a huge deal, and like everyone has to work together. And if you grow to care about both sides of these characters the whole movie, it would feel like this rush of excitement because everyone's having to actually cooperate with each other. And it just kind of feels like, yeah, that's just obviously what we're doing. It's fine, but it doesn't feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel this big meeting of minds. It's not this big thing where these two different characters I've been following all movie finally get to meet and I'm excited about it. And maybe part of that is because Jack Ryan's kind of dull, so it's not like I'm excited about him meeting Sean Connery. Scott Glenn's fine, but like it's not like his character's got any depth to him. He's just a captain. That's it. So I'm left just feeling a little bit nonplussed about everything.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the point of, I know you didn't read it this way, but perhaps the reading of maybe it was meant to be the idea of the triple cross being floated around, the idea that like Sean Connery, because that, look, you described the third act stuff. I agree. No matter what setting we have, no matter what goes on, the third act requires us to care about the characters, and it didn't. Like, there's no setting where that fixes any problems. It requires character carrying, and it falls apart there. However, I would argue that like so much of the second act, with me seeing this thing of maybe all the officers think we're defecting, but Sean Connery still has like an extra ace up his sleeve, because we also never see the letter that is sent to that Soviet premier. We see that he reacts to it. We see that he scrambles the ships and that the NSA believes that they have a lock on it. But when the ambassador comes forward, he specifically tells them this guy's going to blow up the US. Like, he's going to fire off missiles and start World War III. So I think that whether it succeeded or failed, there is the implication that Sean Connery is not on the up and up all the way up until he shakes the hand of Scott Glenn when they welcome him on board. I think that like right up until then, or you can argue the Morse code periscope sequence, but that's still an hour after it otherwise would have been if you just accept what he says at the dinner table is absolutely the end all be all of that. And with that, I think that the second act does work significantly better. I think that I am a bit more intrigued with these characters if I'm looking for, is Sean Connery telling the truth? Because you see Jack Ryan breaking this stuff down, but you only get confirmation insofar as the officers agree, not so much Sean Connery. He's the one pulling the strings, but like if he is on this extra level up above of like lying to the officers and the crew in different ways, that opens up this entire other possibility of like the playing field and how it looks. That works for me. Whether you see it or not that way, up for completely how you read the movie, I guess. But I saw it that way, and it improved the second act overall for me in my viewing experience.
But you said it yourself. Jack Ryan's always right. So why would I ever doubt
once
him?
I realized Jack Ryan was always right, like at a certain point, yeah, okay, he was always right. But there are points where in both the TV show and Sum of All Fears, he is wrong. He does make a faulty assumption. In this one, he just so happens to always be right.
There's just something about the language of the way the movie's told, though, that like it feels like as soon as he says this is what he's doing, it's like that's where we're building to, and it's all about just getting to the point where everyone else believes it. And I'm not saying I'm not saying on paper I can see what you're saying about still trying to build this idea of maybe he's still going to do something else, or there's a third, like, you know, it's either he's defecting or he's going to start launching nukes. Maybe there's a third option in there somewhere that no one's considered, that maybe it's going to do as not a twist per se, but like a, you know, a reveal, a pivot that we don't see coming. But I don't know, it never seemed like that movie. It never seemed like the movie that was going to surprise me ever.
That's look, I can't talk about it because it's a totally separate movie, and what I want to talk about is major spoilers. But Sum of All Fears is one of the few movies where I felt like I had a lock on it, and then it pulled the rug out from under me. So I was almost kind of expecting that in this one. Like, that's the sort of thing where I was like, oh, maybe they'll do this.
I don't care about Sum of All Fears or what happens in it. It's all irrelevant.
I understand. It's from viewing just this movie on its own, yes, but we all come in with our ideas of knowledge of tropes from other movies and knowledge of other things. I happen to just have extra knowledge on Jack Ryan.
That sounded a little bit sad when you said it that way.
It is, yes. But yeah, no, I mean, I the one point that I will hard agree with you is by the time that we hit the third act, once we get everyone on the same sub, and Stellan Skarsgård, who shows up for one scene earlier to basically say, oh, sorry, I was on the can, and now I'm part of this movie. He just shows back up again at the end to say, by the way, remember I was in this movie.
Yeah, he's the captain.
That part,
he's a captain of another sub who's obviously with all the other Russian subs trying to find the Red October because they don't want the Americans to get their hands on it. They want to just take out the crew so that the embarrassment of this is all buried, so on and so on. Yeah, because even when Sam Neill gets shot, because, you know, the saboteur, who turns out to be like the cook character, the Soviet ship, who was like, he was in the background for like one scene. It really wasn't like a big character to be excited about. They
pointed to him and said, hey, you're the guy who's going to notice that I have both nuclear keys on me. And then he went back to washing his dishes.
Yes, that was it. But he starts opening fire because he stayed on the sub, and Sam Neill pushes Sean Connery out the way, he gets shot. And just to make it clear that one hammy scene about him talking about going to Montana and Arizona, he looks up as he's dying and says, I would have liked to go to Montana.
I really wish there was another cut, because when he's giving his whole I want speech, he doesn't just say Montana. He says like, oh, I want to go to Montana. I want to get myself a big round American wife, and I want to make all these crops with that. And I really wish as he was dying, he was like, I really wish I got my big round American wife.
Yes, he also says he wants a second wife a bit later, and I think he also said, hey, can you move freely from state to state with no papers? And like, yeah, if you're allowed to be in the country, yeah, you can go state to state, knock yourself out.
Yeah. I mean, for now, up until like Texas does some weird stuff, but that's always Texas.
Yeah, it could always change in the future, but at least you know, so far, yeah, that's the case. And it's like, okay, fair enough. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm gonna point to any moment of characterization that almost worked, it's gonna be Sam Neill. It's the closest that the movie gets, but it still falls shy in terms of like, oh no, you're it didn't feel like I was getting to know the character. It felt like this was, as you said, the character donning a red shirt.
Yes.
And like, okay, bye.
It was the character telling you, I'm going to die later, here's why you should care about me, and that never works when it's that blatant. And honestly, like, there was so much to explore with Sean Connery's character. There's like one throwaway line where he basically says, you know, this vessel was built for like a first strike, right? That's the whole point of it, is that it can get past all the blockades, it can go undetected, so it can get close and launch a bunch of nukes. It's designed to be the start of a war. And the implication being that was the straw that broke the camel's back, where he's like, no, I can't let this be a thing. I want the Americans to get this ship so they can counter it, so that World War III never starts, right? And that is broadly speaking, a fine enough, on top of the idea that he's just like morally a sound guy who considers what he's doing. And there's some, they mentioned that his wife died about a year ago and he feels guilty because he was at sea at the time. So he's maybe a little bit disillusioned with all the stuff that the Soviets have had him doing all these years in general. But there's something there about the idea of, I morally cannot just like be okay with this. I have to try and even the odds. And it just never really does much with it. He's just kind of like, they intentionally keep him at a distance where he's just kind of, it's a lot of looks when stuff's going on.
Yeah.
It's a lot of little one-note answers. I do laugh, actually, because the few scenes early on when they're speaking Russian, I noticed that other characters around them would be speaking in these long sentences. They've learned, like, full things to say. And then Sean Connery's learned, like, maybe 3 words that he can say quickly and move on. And it's not until it switches to English where all of a sudden he'll start monologuing.
Yeah. Okay, just if we're also hanging out in the third act, I gotta say, so much of this movie has the camps entirely separate, meaning that nobody talks to anybody else outside of their camp. You have the Russians speaking within their own submarine, and then you have all the Americans as they spread about. In order to make it so we don't have to read subtitles, very early on in the movie, as he's reading a passage from, and I can't remember the name of the book now, it's the same one from Oppenheimer.
Yes.
He reads I become death, but they switch over on the word Armageddon, which apparently is the same in both languages, Russian and English. It is Armageddon. So they switch from Russian to English at that point, and from there on, everyone's speaking English across the whole movie. And then you get to the third act, where now the Americans have boarded the Russian vessel. And they spend maybe about 3 minutes with them speaking different languages. The subtitles are back up until it's revealed Jack Ryan can speak some Russian. And so they spend about 90 seconds on Jack Ryan being the interpreter. And then after those 90 seconds are up, I swear to God, Scott Glenn just talks directly to Sean Connery no less than like 6 times.
No, dude, to be fair here, I think you're overlooking something. Sean Connery responds in English to the question about understanding your enemies, revealing that he speaks English. He's speaking English from then on.
Okay, see, I misread that. I thought we were doing a thing where like now it was
No.
Bouncing between.
Because he says you speak some Russian, and he's like, yeah, I do. It's wise to understand your enemies. And he goes, I agree, in English. It's him saying, I also speak English for the same reason you speak Russian. And then from then on, English.
I misread that. Fair enough. Although I will point out that Sam Neill also says the Montana line in English, which there's nothing to say he speaks English, so...
He's just talking straight to the captain. No one else is listening. Don't worry about it. It's basically, it's comic book logic. It's like, asterisks, this is all translated from Russian. Don't worry about it. Right. That's it.
Yeah. Fair enough. I thought that they were just doing a bit where, like, the conversations between Jack Ryan and Sean Connery were translated for the sake of the audience, and then they just forgot they were doing that. No. It's just everyone speaking for themselves.
No.
Which I'm going to then double down on. Why does this Russian man have a Scottish accent when he's speaking in English?
Hey, to be fair, I'm pretty sure a Russian would probably point out why... Well, first of all, he's Lithuanian. Admittedly, that doesn't change the complaint. But
why does a Lithuanian Russian officer have a Scottish accent when speaking in English?
I'm pretty sure any Lithuanians or Russians watching this movie would probably have similar complaints for almost every accent that any of this crew have. This one only sticks out to us because we can identify what the accent he's got is.
That's fair.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'll just respond with this. One day on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, the sci-fi movie podcast that we also do every week, go check that out. We've not gotten to the Highlander movies yet, although the time is coming, right? Because there's going to be a new one. I'm going to quote a line from Sean Connery in that first Highlander movie, where he says, "My name is Ramirez, and I'm a Spaniard." So this is not the first time that Sean Connery would just blatantly say he's a different nationality. Now, to be fair, later on in that film, I think he says something like, "No, I'm not actually a Spaniard. I'm an Egyptian pretending to be a Spaniard," which is its own
still not
kind of worms. But something like that. Anyway, we'll find out when we get there. The point is,
all right.
Is in the first time, and there's definitely been movies where people just act like he's English, even though he's clearly got a Scottish accent, which is especially offensive to my nature. But
wow,
that's another thing to discuss.
Got to draw some lines on some borders somewhere.
So, anywho, I mean, clearly it's ridiculous, but I don't have an answer for you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I in that first sequence, the changeover on the word Armageddon, they draw attention to it because they have like the dolly in shot up to his mouth when he says Armageddon, and then pull back.
Not Connery. You keep saying him. Yeah. It's not Connery we're talking.
It's Putin.
Is that the guy that was named Putin?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
He was the one who was killed by Sean Connery, it's Putin. We zoom in on his mouth and then zoom back out, and that's where they do the transition over. I think that's smart directorially. It makes the point obvious to the audience that there has been a shift, that it's not something where there's all of a sudden they're speaking English. It's saying that the language has changed. And then changing it on a word that is similar in both languages, I also think is pretty smart. So that part, great. Once it hit the end, it just felt a little bit confusing to me, but apparently I just missed that one singular line that would have explained it all.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I handled that stuff well enough. I had no complaints really, outside of some, accents being kind of out. Because is it Jason Isaacs? He's in here. He's like the engineer dude, like young Jason Isaacs.
Is he?
I think so. Yeah, that looked like him. Maybe it wasn't him, but it looked like him if it wasn't.
Which engineer dude?
The main one who was in the in the Russian sub. He was in overalls the entire time.
I don't think so.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it just looked kind of like him. That's entirely possible.
Here, I've got the cast pulls up. Jason. No, it's not Jason Isaacs. I'm not sure who it was.
He looked all like Jason Isaacs. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. That's my misrecognizing someone. But yeah, I mean, I think the language stuff is handled well enough. It's quite creative in how it does it, and it makes it nice and approachable for a Western audience, shall we say? It's really just for me, it's just breaking it. Nothing but plot, nothing but like, let's cut around, let's talk about, what are these doors on this sub? Oh, that's a propulsion system that's quiet. Cut to Vance or Jonesy as he's called, sort of hearing some stuff on the sonar, being like, that's strange. Is that some like seismic, activity or something? What's going on there? Like,
Like he goes through the whole background of saying like our sonar or whatever this technology is was adapted from seismic technology, and whenever we present it with something that's not a ship, it falls back into those old routines, and it says magma flow, and therefore I think that means that it's a new propulsion system, and all that could be summed up with hey, I think this is a Russian sub, but we had to go through all the tech stuff because John Clancy wanted to flex his muscles on this new tech that he invented.
It's in many ways, this is the polar opposite of what Das Boot was, because Das Boot was like, we're on the submarine with this one crew and we never leave it. We never see the perspective of anyone else. Now, I don't think you could have told this movie, even at its most stripped down, exactly like that, because I think at the very least you have to have the two sides. You have to have like the Jack Ryan or equivalent figuring things out on the other side. But I do think cutting around to like everyone, like cutting to goddamn like scenes with the Soviet ambassador talking to the whoever the politician was, like, going to the shipyard and talking about this propulsion system. I think just like a simple like two sides would have been a bit more beneficial, and then fleshed both those sides out, as opposed to we're going to cut around, because I feel like so much of this movie is Jack Ryan. Okay, he flies to the US to talk to James Earl Jones, who puts him in a meeting with these other dudes, right. And then he goes to the shipyard, and then he goes to an aircraft carrier, and he's like, hey, get me on that submarine that's near it. They're near it. Get me on that submarine. So we have to do a whole action set piece of him coming out of a helicopter and lowering it in the water and all that.
No, that's a constant thing when it comes down to the Jack Ryan stuff, because they like doing the globe trotting. They like doing the let's go around all the different areas doing whatever. And the one thing that I feel like is just taken for granted is Jack Ryan, whenever he ends a conversation with somebody who's above him in the ladder, that person will say, all right, pack your bags, you're going. And he'll sputter, he'll throw out whatever, but then he ends up going wherever. If you want to set this in any sort of reality, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Why would you send this random CIA analyst in a helicopter dangling over a submarine in the middle of the Arctic Ocean? No, you're just going to send some sort of message, or if you have to send a person, you're going to send like a Navy SEAL trained to do this. Like, it's all about getting Jack Ryan into the midst of it all, keeping him in the precipice of danger, so that way we have a protagonist that we can follow along.
Yeah, except he's barely a protagonist, I would argue.
Right. He's nowhere. That's the other thing about like pretty much every single one of these is Jack Ryan is kept vague enough for the audience to always relate to him. Yes, he's given a backstory. Yes, he does have a drive of his own in the weakest sense of the word, but in terms of actual good character writing and deep emotional depth, you always get that more from the villains because, or I should say antagonists, because obviously Sean Connery's not so much a villain in this one, but you get it more from the antagonists because they are just the ones who are doing the interesting thing that Jack Ryan is trying to figure out.
Yeah, I'd borderline say Sean Connery's the protagonist of this movie, to be honest.
That's fair. And of this movie,
yeah.
Yes. If you look at it as the Jack Ryan franchise, I think you're forced to say he's technically either the secondary protagonist or an antagonist.
Yeah, but again, I don't care about comparing this to the rest of the Jack Ryan franchise. Yeah. I'm judging it solely as this movie on its own, and you insist in bringing up Sum of All Fears every 5 minutes. Shut up.
To be fair, I'm also talking about the series as well. Although I do want to bring up, we haven't really talked about Alec Baldwin's performance. Like, ignoring the character, him as an actor, I feel like he was really all right. I feel like he was pretty good.
I don't know. It's just Alec Baldwin. Like, I think he's better doing dry humor than he is serious character.
Yes. I think that I liked this character most during that final gun standoff scene where he was just kind of muttering to himself, John McClane style of like, yeah, of course, a lot of things on this submarine don't like bullets, including me. I don't react well to bullets either, Sean Connery.
Yeah, I think, I guess part of, like, I feel like this franchise, if you want to call it that, it kind of is, like, appealing to this kind of, it's like one of these things that's very masculine coded, like, oh, we're trying to appeal to men, because by talking about all this military stuff and whatnot, but it's like one of the more dry and least interesting things to me. So I find like a lot of the characters and a lot of these, like, it's like meant to be like, oh, look at these cool dudes who are making tough decisions and they're high ranking officers and like everyone's trying to get something done. But it's, I don't know, there's something about it. There's nothing like toxic looking masculine about any of it, but there's something just so like celebratory masculine about it that I find just a little bit unappealing. I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I mean, look, we open this entire review with, there's not a woman to be seen. Like, yes, you are right. It doesn't feel like anybody's doing the Djangoistic hoorah of like, we're going to go out and kick some commie ass. But it also feels like there's this low level, well, of course we're willing to go kick some commie ass. We're just not doing that right now. Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that it's like pushing it so far or anything that I feel like it's, I don't know, like over any kind of line. It's not. It's just part of what makes it so uninteresting to me is just the type of characters that are in here and just how kind of straight played everything is. There's just, I don't know. There's a more, I think, interesting way to like do any number of these story beats than what this movie actually presents it with. And I assume that's mostly from the book rather than decisions that are being taken here specifically. But you know, it's just, yeah, I would be like stripping. I would like half the number of characters. I would kind of whittle it down to like the bare essentials so you can focus on the drama at hand and like you know, their motivations and whatnot. Or like I said, alternatively, you could have more actiony elements to it. But I think the intense character drama is the far more interesting and potentially more. The ceiling's much higher for that, I think.
Right, and also it almost perfectly plays in with the idea of the submarine. Like, the fact that the final sequence in this is a shootout almost feels like a farce to an extent, because they specifically say, hey, this is a nuclear submarine. Don't shoot anything. It'll probably explode. And they do it anyway. They unload like full clips into each other, and it almost feels like, well, action is not what we should be doing down here, unless you're going to talk about like just restraining one guy. That's the most I could really say. A fist fight would be all that would make sense.
Yeah, and then obviously like they basically pull a fancy move, and although it's at this point it's Scott Glenn who's given the orders, because you know when they all start working together, Connery starts, he effectively evades a couple torpedoes, and then Glenn takes over whilst Connery and Ryan go try and get the saboteur who's running amok, and basically he's able to kind of like turn the torpedo back by like, you know, swimming under like the other sub.
Yeah.
So it just the Russian sub hits itself, and like it's like the officer who was trying to tell Stellan Skarsgård that the move was ill advised. He has just enough time before they blow up and die, where he's like, "Your arrogance got us killed." I'm like, really? You're not just scared of dying? You've got time for a one-liner here, you little shit.
Of course, absolutely. He's been wanting to tell off Stellan Skarsgård since they set sail. I actually really disliked that final bit just because I felt like it was setting up 3 different things and it just took the stupidest possible option where Skarsgård fires off a torpedo that looks like it's going to hit the Red October. Now, mind you, they've already done a whole thing before this where like because they intercepted the missile before it was armed, it just breaks up on impact. So like now it's this missile that's got no safety precautions or anything like that. It's flying after them. It seems like there's no way out. All of a sudden, this U.S. submarine, which has been around at this point, comes...
It's Scott Glenn's submarine. It's where they came from. So his second in command is now commanding that and sort of runs some interference. Now, there's some interesting details here. He doesn't feel like he can actually fire upon the other Russian sub because technically that's like a big act of war. So we have to be smart about it.
Yes, but that's the thing, is that the idea is they didn't fire upon us, therefore we can't fire at them. He manages to intercept, he manages to come in between the Red October and the torpedo, and therefore draws the torpedo over to their sub, and it's now locked onto them. I thought, because that earlier line was no earlier than 90 seconds ago, this is now, okay, now we can turn around and engage, and we can wipe them off the face of the earth because we have the full power of a naval fleet above us. But no, the torpedo just misses them. They dodge out of the way. It loops back around and starts coming after the Red October again anyway.
Is that the same missile? I thought that was a separate missile.
I thought for sure that was the same one, but maybe not, because it goes off and they say it's looking for another target. Regardless,
I think I guess I'll defend it a little bit because I didn't actually feel like they were setting up that, technically because we've jumped in front and that they're firing upon us now, we can engage. I thought this was them just being creative with like, okay, we cannot engage in combat, but we can like try and help the Red October in other ways. And it's maybe one of the more interesting things that I thought they set up in the final act. They didn't do much with it, to be fair, but this idea of how can we actually help them. One thing that I did love in the final act, though, it was almost just like a running joke, but so basically they fake a radiation leak on the Red October to as an excuse to evacuate all the regular crew. So they're all going, and then there's like an American ship's coming in the distance. It's like, oh shit, okay, the captain and the officers will stay with the sub and try and get the ship's attention and save all you so you can be rescued. Don't worry about it. Right,
we're making sure they can't get our Soviet technology. We'll die with our ship if we have to.
And Tim Curry's like, by God, you'll get the Stalin medal or whatever it is for this cat. So he's been convinced that Sean Connery's the best captain ever after doubting him earlier on. But one of my favorite running things during this is that when they can see some of this happening up top. They see like the sub turning or whatever. Like one of them says, the captain's taking on that US sub on its own, and they all start cheering for the captain. And then later on, when like the US sub has to surface for some reason, they're like, oh look, he scared them into surfacing. They can't fight our captain. He's a hero. Like them like hyping up how great they think their captain is because they think he's fighting the Americans this entire time was actually a really funny running gag to me that I did quite like. So fair enough.
No, I mean it's even they set it up with the idea of, okay, we want to bring the submarine to the US so that they can break it down, learn how to fight against it, and like ultimately World War III can be averted. But in order to do that, if the Soviets don't know that the sub has been given over to them, then they won't have any countermeasures. So the idea is that they have to not only make them think that the Red October has been sunk, has been fully defeated and knocked out of the fight entirely, but all the crew on board has to be unaware of the idea that the Red October was like, they have to make it look like that even to the crew. So the idea that they're engaged in this naval battle is only furthering that message. The idea of like, not only was it sunk, it was sunk in the most glorious battle that we've ever seen.
But the funny part though is though that it was really just supposed to be them diving and then like one planned torpedo near them to make it look like maybe something got hit. Like, the whole idea of this other Russian sub showing up and actually creating a real battle was just complete happenstance. It just made it all look more convincing. That's all that was. But yeah, sure enough, because that Russian sub eventually gets hit with its own torpedo and blows up, all the crew on the surface think that's the Red October blowing up, and they're like, well, our captain went down with the ship. Oh,
he did it. Great job. And then fast forward to the barely before credit scene where the ambassador's like, yeah, we lost the Red October. Sorry about that. Also, have you heard from our other sub with Stellan Skarsgård on that? And the guy who knows everything that happened is just like, did you lose another sub? That's embarrassing. I wouldn't admit to that to anyone.
Yeah, very, very convenient. I will say, though, the final sequence, which is Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin having a conversation on the top of the sub as they're coasting into a river in, I think, was it Maine? Well, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. I
think so.
Whatever state. It was far away from any naval bases, so satellites wouldn't see it, blah, blah. But they're having a conversation, and it's nighttime. And despite the production value of this movie being pretty damn high, despite how good all the other submarine stuff looked, this constant reverse shot that is a composite of them in front of a green screen looks so painfully obvious. There's this perfect rim of backlight around their head at all times, and it just looks so fake. And I'm like, how why did you think this looked okay? What, who okayed this?
I feel like I would have been fine with it if it felt like the scene was really adding this strong punctuation mark and saying like, yes, this is they have managed to come together and they worked out this perfect plan with no knowledge of each other's plans to begin with, and they made it happen. And in the end, he just makes up a poem by Christopher Columbus, and they say, yep, America sure is freaking cool. And that's it. And I'm like, it didn't really work.
The line that made me roll my eyes is when, right at the very end, Alec Baldwin says, welcome to the free world. And I'm like, oh, come on. Really, we're ending...
I think he says, welcome to the new world.
Oh, the new world,
again,
sorry.
Christopher Columbus, but yes.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, really? We're ending this on, America's the promised land, and look at how happy this Russian is that he's finally here. Like, all right.
I do also like the connotations that this movie began production while the Soviet Union was still a thing, and then in the middle of production it broke up. So like, I think I could be wrong here, but I think that text at the beginning saying it's 1984 da 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 and all that, the setting of putting it in 1984 I think was intentional, of like, well, we can't say it's now, like the Cold War is done, we can't say that this is a now thing, so we're just going to put it right at the best possible time for it. I mean, obviously we kind of glossed over a lot of the steps in the movie, but honestly, I don't know what we could really say about the same scene over and over again, where Jack Ryan's trying to convince someone that they need to talk to this captain, and they're like, "Oh, you're crazy. That'll never work." And some of the actors he runs into, funnily enough, there's two actors in this from different Die Hard movies. So the XO that's commanding the American submarine once Scott Glenn's on the Red October, he's a cop from Die Hard 3. But also had a small role in Die Hard 1 that was a different character. The admiral on the Air Force, or the aircraft carrier, he was like the air traffic guy in Die Hard 2, which obviously has nothing to do with this because that had nothing to do with John McTiernan, but it's just funny that an actor from Die Hard 2 is also in this John McTiernan movie. Oh yeah, but absolutely. I'm sure all these actors were just cycling around the studios just being like, hey, doing another one. I mean, that's, I think if you want to strip out an entire section, you strip out the aircraft carrier stuff. It has nothing to do with anything. The only thing it contributes is it gets him in a helicopter and puts him over top the submarine for the Red October. Like, that's it.
Yeah. It's just because it feels like over and over again. He has to convince people, the CIA and politicians, then he has to convince the people on the carrier, then he has to convince Scott Glenn, and there's a whole tense bit where he's like, Glenn's not listening to him because now the Russian ambassador's saying, hey, he's went crazy and he's going to launch nukes, so you better shoot him down, right? And obviously it makes sense why that's a deception, because they don't want this thing to exist so the Americans can look at it. And Jack Ryan's like, no, this is just them trying to get us to destroy it. You have to let me talk to him. And he basically just pulls this Hail Mary of like predicting where Sean Connery's going to turn the sub next to prove that he knows his moves and that there's something to this. And then that leads to the talking via the Morse code.
And saying, and it's again, it's all very clever. The idea that he poses all these questions specifically in a Morse code that only the captain could see through the periscope, so it's not any of the crew is alerted, and then he allows for a response via just a single ping of their sonar rather than having to alert the crew with like a full message being tapped out.
Yeah, can I just say that maybe because of my Star Trek brain, as soon as they got close to each other, all I could think was, hail them. Why are you hailing them?
Yeah. Well, that's what got me was they introduced at the very beginning of this movie the fact that, hey, this is Chekhov's rescue sub. This is the tiny little sub that we're going to use to, and they specifically say like, yeah, it can latch on to anything. German, British, it can. Don't worry about how we're connecting onto this other sub. We've already mentioned it. And then obviously they do it later on, but at a certain point they say, all right, lights up. And I'm like, what do you mean lights up? Because I'm so used to this season with all of our World War II submarines being giant welded shut iron tubes. The moment that someone has a window to look out of, I'm like, oh, you can see forward. Oh, okay, cool.
I mean, it is interesting, actually. This is the first movie that isn't a World War II submarine we're talking about. This is, you know, it's not that much of a period piece for when it was made. It was only 6 years in the past, but still, we're in the 80s now, timeline-wise, and we're doing a more modern submarine.
All the flashing buttons and everything like that, and they're just shy of computers, but whenever we do hit the American base, like I think there's one that's showing like 8-bit graphics of like, all right, here's where we're positioned around Iceland, and here's where they are around Iceland.
Yeah, for a split second, I thought I forgot this was... I'm not even talking about set in 1984. For a split second, I thought, that touchscreen looks really old. And I was like, oh wait, it's because it's even at present day 1990, this was still probably all they had.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This was breaking technology. They're like, check it out, the Atari 2900.
Yeah, I mean, but one of the things I was saying earlier is that this is the polar opposite of Das Boot, and I really mean that in the sense of how flashy this is, with cutting around to everyone and constant shots of torpedoes coming towards ships and subs and things like that. It feels like it's the Hollywood default of how to handle every single sequence. And that's not a knock on John McTiernan. I know he's a good director, but like, it feels like this is just a very by the numbers in a lot of ways type of movie. Yeah, there's a little creative thing with the language and how they sort of make that transition. But for the most part, I wouldn't say that I'm like wowed with the direction of this. And when I think of Das Boot and I think about all the very intentional choices of how to drum up tension by never leaving the sub, by feeling cramped, by feeling claustrophobic and all these things, this movie's never necessarily trying to aim for that, which is a fair point to make, but it also means it's lacking really any atmosphere for quite a large stretch. Like, it's not like when we're on the Red October and like, oh, this is a really cool iconic location, or this is like a sub I'm going to remember, or anything like that. You know, there's never a sense of the geography of the sub. It never really matters or anything like that. It's just like, no, we're just here to cut to the characters in question. We never really care about where we are in the sub.
Yeah, I will say you're right in terms of it doesn't feel like it is doing a great job with the sub being a character or caring about that location. But it also does get very heavy on the geography of like, oh, here's where we are in relation to Iceland, and like here's where all these other ships are coming down from.
The world geography, sure.
Yeah, and that just feels like a misstep in terms of like, it's the Atlantic Ocean. You could just tell me like, they're anywhere. Congratulations. That's where they're at.
Yeah.
The only way that it's going to make any difference if you specifically say they are X amount of minutes away from the U.S. coast, because then that puts a clock on it and it tells me, okay, this is how long the characters have to figure out something.
Yeah, sure. But it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Nah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a very dry movie to me. I find myself nonplussed about any of the characters really, even though I do think there's probably a central good character in the Sean Connery captain that you could turn into like a really compelling character motivation and why he's making this choice, and maybe some of his loyal crew who are also making the same choice with him. Like, there's more there to be had, and it would be far more interesting than all of the deducing from Jack Ryan about, you know, where they're going to go and what they're up to and all these other people who have to be convinced. Like, you could cut out 70% of that, put in all that time into character development, and it would be a much better movie for it.
I agree, but I also think I would have been fine if they took it the other route as well, of just like even going heavier on the sort of mental aspect of it, because I feel like they took this weird middle ground where you said deduce, and that's what really got me, is that Jack doesn't deduce things in this. He knows things.
Okay, the flip then, right? If the one extreme is the ultimate character drama where it's all about getting into the heads of the people making this choice, and it's mostly following that, and then just all we get of the others is what we need for the story to work in terms of like the tension of like, will they pull this off? Will the other Russians get them or whatever? The polar opposite to that is to do the version of the movie where we never see inside the Red October, and it's all people discussing how to handle the fact that this Soviet sub is in this location and we don't know what it's doing. You basically do the fail-safe style movie.
I was gonna say
right?
it. I was gonna say fail-safe.
Right, the fail-safe where they're in the room, they're watching the blips on the board, but we never see inside the thing, and it's not maybe until they get to call the captain on the phone in the last like 20 minutes of the movie where you finally get a sense of who the character is or something. And it's a very different film, of course, but those are the two extreme ends, and I think either one would have been more interesting than what this movie is.
Yeah, no, I was just talking more about the idea of like, show me a Jack Ryan that is doing some level of research, or at the very least, when he is trying to convince somebody else, it doesn't always work. Like, show me where he gets fully shut down and he has to do this like MacGyver runaround of like proceedings and like convince someone to do something that they shouldn't be allowed to do or whatever, instead of it just being a thing of like, hey, just give me a shot, put me in, coach. And he's like, all right, well, you know, it might result in us all exploding, but gosh darn it, I'll give you a chance. I love your moxie, kid.
Yeah, I honestly, I really was hoping that I'd come out of this viewing feeling more for it than I did the first time a long time ago, and I think all it done is kind of made me remember why I felt so indifferent to it. I just don't feel that plussed about anything in it, and you know, I don't think I'll ever feel compelled to watch it again. I can say that much.
Oh, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, again, this will be. I'm not bringing it up in terms of like how the movie is or anything like that, but the larger Jack Ryan franchise, I think there is something to be said that there isn't really a continuity. Like, all of these movies can be viewed as separately as they can. I think that speaks to how unimportant of a character Jack Ryan really is, in terms of he can just be reset for every single movie and you don't think you're really missing anything.
Yeah. It's it's for a particular taste. And it's a very shallow film. Again, no pun intended, because we're talking about submarines, but it's a very
dry, it's shallow.
Yeah.
It's a giant metal tube.
It's a very shallow, I think, character and franchise, which is fine. There's definitely things that I like, which are very surface level and very, you know, I just happen to like a dumb 80s slasher movie. Obviously, I'm never going to argue that they're anything other than that, but I do think they're a bit more to the point, and I see the fun in those. I don't really see the fun in this that much. It feels like you do a lot of jumping through hoops, because that's the fetish of it, is like all the tech talk and the bureaucracy and all of the levels that like one has to go through for all this decision making and whatnot. And if that's your thing, great, enjoy it. I don't want to take it away from you, but I don't get it. Like, I think that stuff on its own is not exciting. Like, you have to make it compelling. Right, whether that's because the characters are more engaging, whether that's because the stakes feel sky high, but that's why, you know, I probably do come back to something like Failsafe, because like Failsafe is a riveting movie, and like it is mainly the stakes that are driving it, and you've got good actors who seem to be genuinely concerned about what's happening. And here it's like, oh, I'm a military man and I've just got a very serious face, and I will never let it show that what's happening is actually going to get to me, because that would actually imply that, oh, something's getting serious here, but I can't show that because I'm a manly man and I don't show my feelings.
Here's what I think that this movie is built for. The person that this is built for is the CIA analyst. The person who is dedicated to their country, enjoys the concept of like, hey, yeah, political thriller, stuff like that, but doesn't get into the like beefy muscle man going out and shooting the commies or whatever like that. He wants the more mindful aspect, the thing of like solving the problem and doing it that way while still theoretically being able to sit behind a desk. Like, I think that that's who this is more or less made for, is still someone who wants the action movie going up against the bad guy sort of thing, but doesn't like the idea of, well, the meathead who got 6 weeks training of basic training is going to be the one solving it, and not me, who went to college for this stuff.
I mean, it's for your like elderly father is, I think, the answer. That's who it's for. It's
I
for
mean,
your...
the Tom Clancy books are literally defined as like airport reading. They are literally defined as like, this is not something meant to challenge you. This is absolutely something that you could just read on a vacation over one single sitting. Like, it's not something super hard, but I think it is trying to be that. I think it is leaning into that audience, and that way it makes them feel all the smarter when they figure it out so quickly.
Yeah. Look, there's nothing wrong with just trying to be a trashy thing and having it, you know, be enjoyable to the audience who likes that particular taste of trash. That's perfectly fine. That's just ain't my taste of trash. And like, the movie almost wants to pretend that it's not trash, and that almost feels disingenuous to me.
Again, that's what I thought. I thought for the longest time, every time I ever heard anyone talk about Hunt for Red October, I thought it was like this high concept, like two battling forces that are constantly outwitting each other. I thought it was Enemy Below, except without the jingoistic part. But no, it's just a Jack Ryan movie.
All right, it's time to rate this movie. Hunt for Red October, out of 10, what are you giving it, David?
I don't feel confident at all. I feel like over this review, I have just gotten less confident.
I love that you came in and said you quite liked it overall, and then I'm like, I'm going to tear this bastard down.
These things. I'm trying to think comparatively, because, like, look, behind the scenes, we recorded the Das Boot review very recently, like literally yesterday. So it's very fresh in my mind, and that is almost poisoning this movie because I'm like, well, it's not Das Boot. I feel like overall, I started at a 7. Maybe, like, if you liked it, I could have been argued to a 7.5, but I feel like I was at the 7 range.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dancing around a 6.5 now, and I'm not sure, because I'm looking at Enemy Below, which I think is pretty much one of the weakest ones we've done this season, and I gave that a 7. We both did. And I'm trying to think if I dislike this more than Enemy Below, and they're very different movies, but yeah, I think I gotta say this is a 6.5. I think this one, it could have been saved by any number of measures, and it just didn't pull any of them out. It just decided to be this kind of, it had an interesting through line, it had an interesting concept for a story, and I think that there were aspects of it that did work, but the fact that we were missing Jack Ryan being a compelling character, the fact that any character needed some sort of emotional depth, the fact that we spent so much of the Jack Ryan story just jumping around to all these different people, each of these is a detractor that could have been fixed at any point along in the story, and they just didn't. So I'll say a 6.5.
Yeah, the jumping around stuff just made it feel like the movie was still setting things up, even like way over an hour in. It felt like we were still in the opening 15 minutes of setting stuff up. And it never calms down, so it never really feels like it gets into the actual real movie gear for me. So by the time it gets to the end, I'm like, oh, I guess, 2 hours or so passed, it's time to wrap up, but I don't really feel like I ever shifted into, like, the middle of the movie.
There's one point where Jack Ryan says, like, oh, yeah, that's why the Red October has been outrunning them for 2 days now. And I'm like, it's been 2 days? When did that happen?
Yeah, the sense of time passing is, well, it's not good. Not good, Bob.
Yeah.
So I'm still tempted to go as high as a 6, because I think it's a very watchable, slick movie, even if I think it doesn't really let me feel that much. There's some interesting concepts there. It's nice to see a lot of the faces in it. But it's kind of a 6 that I'm disappointed in. Like, it's not, because sometimes I give a 6 and I'm like, oh, this is a fun little cheesy movie, 6 out of 10. This is a 6 out of 10, but the ceiling was way higher than this. This could be way, way better, and it's kind of scraping to a 6, and it's less than the sum of its parts, and that feels kind of, I was tempted to go 5.5. I'm going to say 6, because I think that's maybe just a bit harsh. So
I was dragged down half a point. You were dragged up half a point.
yeah, I suppose, yeah, if you want to put it that way.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair with me. I think we probably do come to the same conclusion on does it make the cut?
Nope.
Oh, you're just saying flat out no.
Yeah, I'm saying flat out no.
All right. Fair enough. I guess with a 6 that makes sense. I was thinking we were going to meet it cutting it close, but
what, a 6 and a 6.5? I mean, I don't know if that feels cutting it close to me. I think a 7 is saying something is good, and like, is it making the cut? Well, that depends on what other factors are at play, but 6 and a 6.5 feels like a...
I'm trying to scroll up and looking for precedents. I'm trying to like scroll. However, I just came across a 6 and a 7, which got cut from the collection, which does not give my methodology any sort of credence here.
Yeah, you could...
Here we go. A 6 and a 6 got cutting it close for the first airport movie.
Okay, that's fair, but that's like... I think there's more charm to that movie than this. I enjoyed Airport more than I did Hunt for Red October.
All right. I mean, I'm not hard selling the cutting it close. I will come down to your level. I would like it on the record at least that I at least put it immediately forward for cutting it close before immediately giving way.
Okay. I'd like it on the record that I immediately said no.
All right.
Since we're putting things on the record now.
Yes. Also on the record, during the ratings rundown, I almost flashed my balls. That's just how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how close we were, but technically there was a motion to perhaps do it.
Pete, I'm trying to sell it.
I don't know if that's a selling point as much as you think it is, Dave.
Oh, that's fair. I can't see the back end analytics. What do we have in terms of male to female audience?
I think you're hoping they want to see a lot more back end themselves with the way you're talking.
Fair.
Anyway, that is Hunt for Red October. Submarine season continues for a couple more weeks. Next week, we're into the mid-90s with Crimson Tide, a Tony Scott directed movie with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. This should be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to it. So,
Sure.
Very different premise to any of the ones so far, which is cool. So we'll see how that plays out next time on the show. And obviously over at Atomic Cinema Experiment, we've been doing a bunch of different things. We had Iron Lung, which was also kind of submarine-esque, although it's, in an ocean of blood on a moon, but so it's not exactly the same as a submarine movie, but it's a submersible.
Is that not what Crimson Tide's about? That's what I'm picking up from the title.
We did About Time, which is a bit more rom-commy, and Delicatessen was this week. So there's stuff going on. Next week should be the end of Oak Street, a big new release on Ace. So if you want to check out the Sci-Fi Podcast, go check out that. But, of course, you can support everything, both shows and everything else from MailFuzz Movies over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Get access to the Rating Rundown segment for each episode, plus the bonus monthly show we do called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies of all time. August actually had a bonus free one, which came out in the middle of the month for a movie called Club Lingerie, which was terrible. You can get that on YouTube. If you're on the audio feed and you want to get one of the free episodes, it will be on Patreon to download the audio podcast version for free. You don't have to necessarily be a patron to get the free episode, but it will be hosted there as well. But there's no podcast feed for it because all the other episodes don't go out for free, so why would there be?
I was going to say, we're not going to interrupt the collector's cut feed to show you Club Lingerie. You don't want that.
Yeah, I may be putting some old Criterion episodes in between some of the Criterion season stuff, but that's a very different thing from Club Lingerie and the upcoming state property at the time of recording. So, look forward to that. And thanks to everyone who did support us. It really does make a difference and help keep the show coming. But that is us, everyone. That has been the show. Thank you very much for joining. And if you love Hunt for Red October and you're mad at us, be gentle in the comments. I know that this movie does have kind of a fan. I think there's people of a certain age who grew up with this and probably have a lot of fondness for it. I didn't see it as a kid. I saw it for the first time when I was like 20, and it didn't really land all that much. And
I saw it for the first time at age 32. So
yes, almost 33.
Almost. Last week, actually, as of the release of this episode.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Woo.
As an Irish person would say, you're 33 years old.
Wow, you are trying to offend everybody this time around, huh?
Well, I can't just do a Sean Connery impression all episodes. I mean, that'd be too easy.
Oh, are you not? I thought that was your whole thing.
No, see, if you're doing a Sean Connery impression, you have to start doing all your S's with a sh sound. So you're like, you know, I went swimming today at the pool, and I, you know, shat myself. He said, well, that's just SH anyway. Let's say.
I think my favorite, I got to remember the joke setup, but it's something along the lines of like, what time does Sean Connery
I know this one.
head down? Yeah, what time does he head down to do his daily sports tennis?
Tennis? I don't even have a racket.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, this is show everyone. Thank you very much. This has been Collector's Cut. We'll see you next time. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.